here in Australia, it's been, it's all about age checks, and you're going to have a digital ID every single time you use a search engine. And they might be using facial recognition. They want age, they want address, they want, as much information as they get to, again, protect the children. Australians will soon be subjected to a mandatory age check across the internet landscape in what has been described as huge and unprecedented change. Now, I think you'll get this very quickly. I don't like this. And it's because I don't believe that the government has any right to be controlling my behavior online. Now, to some extent, this is a similar problem to what we see throughout society, right? Why should the government be able to tell you whether or not you can try crack cocaine? Why is forms of drugs completely illegal, but other forms aren't? And especially when you go down the more medicinal route, right? You've got the very obvious lack of incentive for the pharmaceutical industry to allow people to use natural supplements and natural healthcare products, but they want you to get pumped with chemotherapy and radiation. Why? Because they make money. So there's always going to be a butting of the heads between the status quo, the ability to make money, and the way that it's possible to manipulate the government into your bidding, right? In many ways, that's what COVID taught us, right? We're living in a free market, we're told. But actually, it was very clear that there was some kind of, I even described it like this before, like medical apartheid here in Melbourne, where if you didn't get a form of, very early stage medical experimentation implemented, you couldn't get access to certain parts of the city, be that a restaurant, a cafe, a sports stadium, a school, an office. It was completely insane, but it was very obviously almost like a medical fascism, right? The government was working in lockstep with the private businesses, and they all made a ton of money with no consequences. I have people in my direct family that have side effects from COVID-19 jabs. Are they getting paid? No. Are the people that put the policy in place during the lockdowns still not in jail? Yes. Now are they in cushy jobs in the pharmaceutical industry? Absolutely. So this is going on whether you like it or not, Jake. I understand that. And I do also believe in this whole idea of just focus on what you can control. But the purpose of this podcast episode is just, this caught my attention today and just wound me up. Be like, God, of course they're coming for the internet. What a surprise. And, being an embracer of AI, I thought I'd run this through Grok and just see what the situation was. And so asked for a summary of what the Online Safety Act was and what are 3 impacts. And I started off with the UK. And, they talk about the fact that it's been regulated by Ofcom, and it's about enhancing protection for children. And that sounds great, right? Who doesn't want a nicer world for a child to be in? But my pushback is it the government's job to be policing what a teenager does digitally? To me, the obvious answer is no. It's absolutely the parents' job. They are still under your roof, right? The day they're 18 and they walk out, well, they're an adult. They're allowed to drink alcohol. They're allowed to vote. They are officially of an age at which point they're no longer going to be sent to juvenile jail. They'll end up in, big boys bad school. And at which point they take the blame for their decisions. But prior to that point, it's the parents' responsibility. And it's very clear to me this. But of course, people don't like to take responsibility for their own problems. And often that might be their children. Oh, no. Let's get the government in to help us out here. But what are the feedback or implementation issues or implications? Well, obviously, privacy and security for all users. So in the extremely niche scenario of some twisted teenage boy who's had his way with his neighbor's daughter because of watching porn, every single other internet user now has to report their age when they're making an online search. Doesn't that seem like overkill? Absolutely, to me. And then, of course, it's then you have the potential for censorship, right? Now the government is actively getting involved in who can see what and what's allowed. They are playing God. Now, to some degree, that's what Zuckerberg has been doing for a long time, right? These extraordinarily powerful entrepreneurs out of Silicon Valley, they're sitting and they are in control of just an enormous amount of power. I heard someone recently describe Zuckerberg as as Caesar, as Rome of the digital world, right? Billions of people are using digital products that he is still the majority controller of Meta. It's absolutely unbelievable scenario. And I then asked the same question around, Australia. And again, it's amusing, isn't it? The Online Safety Act. Now, I noted here, this is kind of one to keep in mind. This came in 2021. Oh, interesting. Well, 2021 was height of the lockdowns. Was anyone really looking at this stuff at the time? Not really. I noticed that the implementation will be on the 27th of December this year, when everyone's on Christmas holidays. We'll just sneak it in the back door, shall we? As if no one's even noticing. And basically, yeah, every time you make a search, you're going to have to put in some kind of verification. It might be a Face ID, like self-verification type thing that you use for currently banking, or some other app that you might have. And, obviously they're trying to wheedle out a 15-year-old that's trying to watch something that they shouldn't be watching. But what was interesting here was I noticed the penalties, right? It's actually a smart move, obviously, is you've got, the CEO of 4 search engine businesses that you can go and talk to and say, by the way, if one of your users is falling foul of our new law, we're going to charge you $50 million per breach. So the incentive for those businesses is like, well, we're batting on your turf. Obviously, we're going to fall into line. So I'm expecting absolutely the big software players to jump in line. It might even be Apple itself. It was an interesting one. This recently, someone came up with this to me. It's like, what happens when Apple get incentivized by such an extent through either some kind of like heavy taxation or just outright bribery at the very top to use the threat of like, you don't get access to your iPhone unless you do XYZ. It's like, wow, okay, so suddenly you're cut off from your communication tool, your finance tool, your entertainment tool, and it can see exactly where you are, it can see how much money you've got. Like the threat to potentially heavily control people is just so obviously there, right? Now, again, I guess I'm throwing this out as like what does this mean, or what might happen? I don't know. And that's where you come back to like one of the reasons that Bitcoin is so empowering, and the idea of freedom technology, and why I'm so excited about something like Nostr. Because it's quite obvious, right? There's just extraordinary choke points or bottlenecks through which authoritarian-minded players can begin to exert some extreme power. And this for sure is fourth turning stuff, right? If you've been out there and you've read, what happens every 80 odd years, well, history rhymes, but then people forget, and stupid shit happens again, and people die. And then out of the ashes comes something new. And from the study I've done, we're right in the middle right now of a seismic shift. Now, can it mean that the rise of China is imminent and that's going to be the new world superpower? Or is the US going to have some kind of resurgence? I don't know what's going to happen. And it's one of the beauties of Bitcoin and self-custody, where in some ways I don't need to know. Like, I'm cool with where I'm at.